Welcome to MyLife Chassidus Applied, episode 531. This program is in loving memory of Miriam Basalio Altes Allah Shalom and Emerita Baruch ben Yomim ben Menucha Lana Altes, Yukasil ben Leah Rochel and Rochel Bas Liba Farkash, dedicated by Pinchas Todders ben Miriam and Sarah Bas Rochel Altes. So we've entered into the month of Shvat, which in context of Chassidus Applied, especially Chabad Chassidus, the month of Yud Shevat, which is this coming Shabbos, the 75th anniversary of the Histalkus Hilula of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and immediately following that, the ascension of the Maaleh Mokim, the Rebbe of the Deir Ashvi, our Rebbe, on that same Yud Shevat. The formal acceptance of the leadership of Nisias was a year later, Yud Shevat Tavshin Yud Aleph, when the Rebbe said Basi L'Gani. But Zarach HaShemesh or Ba HaShemesh, goes from immediately over, like it was Beis Nissen from the Rebbe Rashab to the Frierdiker Rebbe, and with each Rebbe, same with Yud Shevat. So before we go into questions, that many questions have come in, especially being a special milestone, 75 years, let's just a little background about Yud Shevat itself. So as it is this year, Yud Shevat, Tavshin Yud was on a Shabbos, except it was Shabbos Parsha Boy. Now it's Shabbos Parsha Beshalach this year. So we'll also be talking about Beshalach, and we'll talk about some other timely matters as well. That morning, a little after 8 a.m., Shabbos morning, was the Histalkus. As is known, the Rebbe immediately arrived to 770 early on when he heard the news and told everybody who wants to walk in that they have to go to the mikveh and Wasser, because of course it's a moment, sacred time. On Shabbos you don't show any avelus, sadness, but of course after Shabbos, you can imagine, as the news spread, and then on Sunday was the actual Levayit. There's even a video of the Levayit today we have. Very sad. But the Eibishter makes sure that his people are protected, and the Rebbe became the Rebbe of the next generation, the Deir Ashvi. That Shabbos, the Rebbe, who was then head of the Meisdus of Kahos, and Machne Yisrael, Americas, would publish from time to time kuntresim. So for that Shabbos, the Rebbe gave out a kuntres, as he writes in the Pesach Dover, in the introduction to the kuntres, that this is a maamar that the Frierdiker Rebbe gave the Rebbe to publish. It's not a maamar that was delivered then. The Frierdiker Rebbe was not saying maamarim any longer in the last few years. So it's a maamar from Tafresh Pei Gimel, from Shabbos Parsha Boy, Tafresh Pei Gimel. And it came out in a kuntres Yud Gimel Shvat. Essentially 2 maamarim, each one with 5 chapters. The first is Basi L'Gani, and then it goes into the next maamar. And Yud Shevat, then, like it says in the kaytz, in the title of the maamar, that's covered the yahrzeit of the Frierdiker Rebbe's grandmother, the Rebbetzin Rivke. And the maamar of Yud Gimel Shvat is covered the yahrzeit of the Frierdiker Rebbe's mother, Shtar Sarah, and Yud Gimel Shvat. Then, following that, the maamar was not finished yet. The Hemshech continues. So for Purim, the Rebbe gave out another kuntres, which was already now after the Histalkus, and that covers another 5 chapters. And then finally, Beis Nissen gave out the final kuntres of this Hemshech, another 5 chapters. So basically, the Hemshech of Basi L'Gani consists of 4 maamarim. Each maamar has 5 chapters, so it's a total of 20 chapters. As we know, the following year became Yud Shevat Tavshin Yud Aleph, and the anticipation was great. And the Rebbe was saying Sichos, and finally the Rebbe said the maamar, you could hear it literally when you hear the recording, the drama involved. The Rebbe saying a maamar. He said the Rebbe the Shver Heipton Basi L'Gani Achesi Kalo. So Basi L'Gani became the maamar, the magnum opus, if you wish, the mission statement of the Rebbe. And just like the Frierdiker Rebbe, Reishis Goyim HaMolek was the last maamar the Rebbe Rashab wrote and said. So the Frierdiker Rebbe, that's his first maamar. The same thing you find with Keser Yitnu of the Rebbe Marash. The Marash, the Rebbe Rashab. And now, Basi L'Gani. But no one knew what would happen in the following years. So the next year, the Rebbe again said Basi L'Gani. But this time he focused on the second chapter. Basi L'Gani Tovshin Yud Aleph came with Nigunim. The Rebbe was mafsik in different sections of the maamar. As I said, you could hear it today on recording. He, of course, cited all the Rabbeim. He told stories and different taters from each Rebbe. And that became the custom Yud Shevat. The Rebbe would bring all the Rabbeim, starting from the Baal Shem Tov, all the way to the Rebbe Rashab. The maamar itself is, of course, from the Frierdiker Rebbe. And in Tovshin Yud Beis, the Rebbe focused on the second chapter of the Hemshech. And so it went every year. Started realizing that every year the Rebbe was focusing on the chapter that corresponded to that year. So Tovshin Yud Gimel, chapter 3. Chapter 4, Tovshin Yud Dalet. And so it went for 20 years. Tovshin Lamed was the conclusion of the Hemshech, the 20th chapter. No one knew what would happen the next year. The next year, the Rebbe began the cycle again. In a different manner, a different approach, and different emphasis. There are different theories of how the Rebbe's distinction of the second cycle compared to the first. But bottom line is that second cycle, that went Lamed Aleph, Perek Aleph, Lamed Beis, Perek Beis. And so it went till Tovshin Mem Ches was the last time the Rebbe said maamar Basi L'Gani, after the Stalkus of the Rebbetzin Chaim Mushke. So we have basically almost 2 complete cycles from the Rebbe. 20 chapters from Tovshin Yud Aleph through Tovshin Lamed, and then 18 chapters covered from Tovshin Lamed Aleph through Tovshin Mem Ches. Okay, so now this year, what corresponds? So since then became the custom of Chassidim that every year you learn that part, the maamar Basi L'Gani in general, but specifically the chapter that corresponds to the year. So this year we're up to chapter 15, and we're now in many cycles later. And the Rebbe, we indeed have 2 maamarim from the Rebbe, Tovshin Chav Hei and Tovshin Mem Hei. Tovshin Chav Hei, I can't say I remember. I was a child. Tovshin Mem Hei, I remember very vividly. So it'd be worthwhile to go learn these maamarim. Not just worthwhile, this has become mamash a custom. It's a way to honor Yud Shevat. And especially considering the theme of the maamar really captures the whole nesiyas and leadership of the Rebbe. So here we are, Chassidus Applied. The whole thing is based on the inspiration we get from the Rabbeim. So fitting that we focus on this, some of the themes, and it's always good to begin with the central theme. So let's begin with that, reviewing what is the central theme of Basi L'Gani in general, and then specifically zeroing in and focusing on Tovshin, on Perek Tezvav, and the way it was explained in Tovshin Chav Hei and Tovshin Mem Hei, which would be exactly 60 and 40 years, respectively, from today. We're now in Tovshin Pei Hei. So Tovshin Mem Hei is 40 years ago, Tovshin Chav Hei is 60 years ago. So the central theme of the maamar is about the purpose of why we come to this world, to transform the world, to make it a home, a garden for the divine. And hence, Basi L'Gani Achei Sikala. Why does it say L'Gani? So the Medrash, he quotes the Medrash Shir Hashirim Rabbah. L'Gan doesn't say L'Gan to the garden, it says to my garden. What does that emphasize? L'Gnuni, to my bridal chamber. So it's an intimate place where God is not just spending time there, but it's his home, it's his environment. We know Yom Chassinos is Matan Torah is compared to a Chassina. So the world, once Matan Torah came, and then the Mishkan, as we'll discuss, that's L'Gnuni. And the Ikar Shechina B'Tachtenim Ma'isa. The primary Shechina rested below at the beginning of creation. Not in the higher worlds, in this world. But then, due to the kaytz adas, as the Medrash continues, as he quotes, as the Frierdiker Rebbe cites, due to the kaytz adas, and then the subsequent transgressions, it caused the stalkus hashchina, the concealment from one rakia, from earth to rakia, to the lower, to the first rakia, first heaven, then to the second, 7 generations, in general, of course, because the Mishnah does say there were 10 generations, from Adam to Noach to Lamabel, but overall, generally 7 generations, including the generations after Noach. There was also more transgressions, Terafloga, and so on, until Avraham Avinu began to reverse the process. He began to draw down the Shekhinah back to earth, from the seventh heaven to the sixth heaven, then Yitzchak and Yaakov, and 7 generations from Avraham finally brought the Shekhinah. And who was that? Moshe Rabbeinu. After Matan Torah, and then the building of the Mishkan, v'asur l'migdash v'shachanti b'seicham. So Ikar Shekhinah, that was there in the beginning of creation, now manifests itself in the physical Mishkan, which would later continue in the Beis HaMikdash by Rishon, by Sheni. However, as we know, those two were destroyed. So our Avodah today is to continue that Avodah of bringing down the Shekhinah until we do so permanently with the Geula Amitis V'Ashlema. That's the central theme of the whole Basi L'Gani. Then he goes on to say, how do we do it? So we look at the Mishkan. What was the main Avodah in the Mishkan? Korbanos. So we too, Odom Kiyakrim Mekem Korban LaHashem, Min HaBehema. We take our animal soul, the Behema, Nefesh HaBamis, and the physical world, and we bring it closer and we offer it to God. The transformation, Atzei Shittim, which is Shittim from the word, also from the meaning Shtus, the insanity or the irrationality of L'Umazeh. We take the Shtus L'Umazeh and transform it to Shtus the Kedusha. Atzei Shittim Eimdim. And then he goes on to explain the Kroshim, the beams of the Mishkan. That too in Avodah is the transformation of Kuf, Rei, Shin, Sheker, letter Sheker, from falsity and this duplicity and deceptiveness into a world of emes. Then after the first 10 chapters, he continues, and who does this Avodah? The Tzivus Hashem. The Tzivus Hashem do this Avodah, the soldiers. Tzivus Hashem is the name given to the Yidden when they went out of Mitzrayim. And those Tzivus Hashem would build the Mishkan, led by Moshe Rabbeinu, the Deir HaShvi. So Tzivus Hashem is given this Avodah. So too the Tzivus Hashem of our generation. And here's where the Rebbe said, Deir HaShvi, just like Moshe was the 7th generation from Avraham, we are the 7th generation from the Alter Rebbe. That's how it works. So, and like the maamar says, and this is pure Hashgacha Eliyena, right at the beginning of the maamar, it says, Deir HaShvi, Kol HaShvin Chavivin. All 7ths are precious, are beloved, are valuable. Why he adds that? Well, it says it's the MyLife Shvi, but you could see it relates to our Deir HaShvi. So when the Rebbe is starting Basi L'Gani, the Deir HaShvi, it all works, all fits in, kafte v'ferach. So our job is to finish the work. The final steps are bringing v'shachanti b'seichem in a permanent way with the Geula Amitis V'Ashlema. Now, continuing on from chapter 11 and on in Basi L'Gani, now he talks, what is this, what gives us the strength to achieve this? Because remember, it's not a simple job. You're talking about a battle with the animal soul, a battle with the materialism of this world. To transform it is not easy. So we're given kaytz. And he gives a classic mashal, a powerful mashal, that when a king who leads his empire goes to war against an enemy, something about midas hanitzachon, to be victorious over the enemy, reaches the deepest part of the melech. Deeper, he says, even than rotzen and tainug, which are the kaytz makifim of chayin yechide. Doesn't mention those terms, but because netzach midas hanitzachon, not because the war, the battle is to conquer something or to gain something. Just the mere fact to be victorious over the enemy. The nesava kodesh baruch hu liyis baruch dir b'tachtenim. The desire to have a dir b'tachtenim is dafkin tachtenim with his klippus and sitra achre and menagdim, an opposition. That opposition reaches the deepest level in the etzem. So the king, what does he do then? He splurges his treasures. Bizbuz ha'etzes. And he explains, etzes, the treasures in his archives that remain hidden for generations, and no one has ever seen them. They've been gathering and collected over the generations from his parents and grandparents. These etzes always remain behelim, even by the king. But for this purpose, he reveals them for the midas hanitzachon. He gives them to who? To the simple foot soldiers that lead the way, the Tzivus Hashem, that build this dir b'tachtenim, the Basi L'Gani. What is this eitzer in Ruchnis? So he explains it with the Tikkun Zeyar. Tikkun Zeyar says, Eir Ein Sof is l'mayla aden kaytz. Lamata mata aden tachlis. Two statements. So first he explains Lamata mata aden tachlis, that Ein Sof, the divine infinite energy, which God uses to express himself, that field of energy that draws and creates all of existence, it's like sunlight to the sun. So the sunlight is what the sun emanates. So God too used the air to create existence. So this Ein Sof has two tracks, so to speak, two qualities. One is that it goes Lamata mata aden tachlis, meaning the Ein Sof doesn't just remain before the tzimtzum, infinite light, but it travels after the tzimtzum and into all of existence, and even in the lowest levels, where that light is concealed, to the point you have a pare says, Li Erivani Esasin, the river is mine, I'm self-made. Or like he explains in Avedi, Keichin Ve'etzim Yadi, person thinks, I'm a self-made individual. So Va'atem Achayas Kulam, that there too, Lamata Mata Aden Tachlis, Ein Sof is there. It could be concealed. I may not be aware of it, but it's there everywhere. And that introduces us now as an introduction, as the Rebbe says in next year's maamar, Tavshel Chavov, he says, Frier, he talks about the unplekte kaytz, the revealed energy, which is Lamata Mata Aden Tachlis. Then he speaks about the behaltene kaytz. And that's the Eitzer that's concealed. That's Lamay Lamala Aden Ketz. And that's what he begins to talk about in chapter 15. So chapters 11, 12, 13, 14, especially 12, 13, 14, is focused on Lamata Mata Aden Tachlis. Chapter 15, that corresponds to this year, is Lamay Lamala Aden Ketz. As the Frierdiker Rebbe teaches, what does that mean? As the Rebbe asks in Tavshel Chavhei, May Lamata Mata Aden Tachlis, we understand the quality. That the Ein Sof is so powerful, it doesn't just remain intact where it is, but it goes down even after the tzimtzum and retains and preserves its integrity of Ein Sof. But Ma'ala Aden Ketz is before the tzimtzum, it's there already. What are you saying exactly? What's the quality of L'mayla? Says the Frierdiker Rebbe, Behelem acher helem, ilui acher ilui. So we're talking now a very different type of power, the power to conceal. The power that is, like you could say, the mystique of Elokus. And there too, it's L'mayla, hecher and hecher, Aden Ketz, without end. So you would think, you could say, it's only the Gilui of Elokus goes down Lamata Mata Aden Tachlis. But here he's adding also the Helem Acher Helem, Ilui Acher Ilui. And the Rebbe goes on to explain that in Tavshel Chavhei. So number one chiddush here is that it's not just Lamata, but it's also Lamata Mata Aden Tachlis, also Lamay Aden Ketz. But to take it a step further, what is really the point? That's the Eitzer Hanelam. That the Eibishter reveals that which is capable of being revealed. That's obvious. The soldiers and the military also get other resources, not just the eitzes that were concealed. They get weapons, artillery, strategy. There's many resources they need to fight a battle. That's the amplekta, that's the revealed resources, like the koiches gluyim. But then they get also something, that which is completely concealed. And not just concealed relative, but fundamentally concealed, as he explains later in the Hemshech. And the Rebbe's maamar, which is just tremendous chiddush. Because you'd think all they need is to give them what they need to fight the war. But because Midas and Etzachim reaches in the Etzem, and here you're fulfilling the very kavan of Nesava, because Baruch Hu Nesav is in Atzmos, which is higher than everything. That's why they also get the Eitzer. And we appreciate that by first understanding that they get the Giluyim. So think of it like he gives the example of a teacher and a student. The first thing that the student gets is what the teacher teaches him, that which is revealed, whether it's Aleph Beis or Ben Chomesh L'Mikra or Ben Eser L'Mishnah. But then he also will get things that are completely concealed. In the next chapter, 16, and the Rebbe's maamar Tavshel Chavov, he explains, based on the maamar chapter 16, that there's a makif hakorev, a makif harochik. So the makif hakorev includes, it's a makif. Why? Because there's inyanim in the gilui that it'll take 40 years for a person to appreciate. But he gets more than that. He even gets the things that are fundamentally concealed. That's the chiddush of L'mayla Aden Ketz. What does it mean in Aveda? we could say, one could argue, you can have a relationship with God as it relates to us. Asare mamoris nivra elam, maaleh kalaman, even sevav kalaman, but as it relates to existence. But who says you can have a relationship with the divine that is higher than Gilui? You could say that's in God's domain. Elikim hasta dover, it's concealed, and that's that. Ve'ein lanu esek b'nistaris. It's not something it's off limits. Says the Tikkun Isaiah, no eidin sof is l'mayla maaleh adin kaytz, elamata mata adin tachlis. And that is indeed revealed during the time of Milchama. Another chiddush. We're not talking about atzmus here. Atzmus, yes, we have koyach atzmus, and the neshama is rooted there. He's saying eidin sof is l'mayla maaleh adin kaytz. As the Rebbe explains actually in Tafshin Chavav, but also in Tafshin Chafei to some extent, because atzmus, there's no two kavim. In the next chapter, he's going to say that even though they're both Eidei Sof as both milas, and just as he was revealed to the lowest level, he's also concealed to the highest levels. It's helam acher helam, ilui acher ilui. But atzmus is the chelas atzmus to radiate, lahoyer, or shalei lahoyer is all one. You can't call them two separate things. Like he says in chapter 16, that Dover Shem, they completely do opposite, two different things. What's the chiddush of that? That atzmus has both capacities. Atzmus can do anything. But that's mitzad kol yochel ve'ebishter, yechelas atzmus. The fact that Eidei Sof has it, and obviously Eidei Sof has it only because it's me'ein ha'moyer, and it has it as an extension because the Eibishter allows those kaytz to be reflected in the oyer. But that tells you that it's gone over from its built-in mitzias nimtza to mitzias nimtza. Because remember, the chiddush of oyer, of the Rabbeinu HaGodel, as the Rebbe Rashab says in Vayelech Samach Vav, is that it's a mitzias on one hand. It's not built-in mitzias nimtza, it's oyer. On the other hand, it's nothing but batel telakus. And that's why it's different than the Ramak and the Rameh, where they discuss whether Kesser is Ein Sof or not. It is a whole other getter, because it's called Metzias is Bittel. But it has the maaleh that it brings Koyach HaAtzmus, which is completely beyond us, and allows it to be integrated. So even Ein Sof also has the element of not just Koyach HaGilui, Lamata Mata Adin Tachlis, but Koyach HaHelam. So the eitzes don't just remain at Inyan Atzmi, they come into Etzema Eir as well, also that ultimately they're revealed to us. Because when the king reveals and splurges, the Bizbuz Eitzes, that's an actual Gili. But it's not a Gili of a level that's Shaykh to Gili. It's being Megal something that's fundamentally beyond Gili. So these are some of the points. What the bottom line is, that the Aveda Lamat and Tachtenim, and especially in the later generations, Ikvis and the Meshicha, Deir Ashvi, were given tremendous resources that were not revealed in all the generations before, because the battle is so strong, and because in order to be victorious in this battle. So it tells us, so in a way you could say the whole Basi L'Gani, especially this chapter, these chapters, talk about the strengths, the resources we are given to achieve our Aveda. Now, of course, the Rebbe, as he's becoming a Rebbe of the Deir Ashvi, wants to emphasize that, because this was like, please know, it's like when you go out the first march, the first battle, know that what kind of resources you have. You have to know what you're capable of. So you're able to achieve anything that comes your way, no matter what meniyas v'ikuvim, what obstacles or impediments. You have the eitzes. You don't only have lamata mata adin tachlis, which is also gevaldik. You also have lamayla adin kaytz. These concealed faculties, these concealed eitzes, I should say, that come from this power of helam acher helam, ili acher ili. So the first lesson, of course, is the empowerment that we in this generation have, and especially when we're anonas al gab anok, like a midget that stands on the shoulders of giants. So cumulatively, we have tremendous, tremendous power. So nothing can stand in our way. People ask, how do people have such confidence? So I say the Rebbe infused that confidence because it's coming from these sources. You hear that you have maaleh adin kaytz, and you have it here down lamata, in each one of us, the tzivus Hashem. That's unbelievable. There's nothing you can't accomplish. So this answers the question, what lessons do we learn from chapter 15 of Basi L'Gani? There are obviously more lessons to be learned, but this is one of them. Indeed, just to add one more point, the Rebbe emphasizes, which is not explicit in the maamar in chapter 15, that actually the koyach ha'helam, meaning the maaleh, comes from a deeper place than even the mata. Because the power, like he says, Atahu kel mistater at the end of the chapter, that the Ata is also mistater, not just the kale of Gilui, kale, which is referring to Gilui, but the mistater, because to conceal requires more power than to reveal. Which again makes sense because when there's a managid, an enemy, that resistance, that obstacle actually brings out even deeper kaytz. What is the significance of this milestone, 75 years? So, in general speaking, so-called round numbers, like 10, 20, 30, 100, is significant. A mispar shalom. 75 is not a mispar shalom like 80 or 70, but it's still considered to be. 75 is 3/4 to 100. So the fact that we're 75 years from the time of Yud Shevat Tavshin Yud till today, and you see Chabad Chassidus, Shlichus, the Aveda of the Rebbe has only grown. As the Rebbe made it very clear, it only grows maaleh and kaytz, both quantitatively and qualitatively. So when it comes to a special milestone like this, we can only speculate what the Rebbe may have said. He spoke other times about the number 75. It has all kinds of significance. That basically, that this is a year of special emphasis to gather even more strengths. That despite the fact that we've had setbacks and we would have loved Mashiach should have been here already 30 years ago, but the kaytz keep coming, and to not scrounge them, to not use them is a terrible tragedy. Nothing worse. You're getting kaytz, mama's blessings. So a special year like this is a year to take on the resolutions, to commit to the learning of the Rebbe's Torah, to the understanding, to teaching it to others, and of course implementing it in every possible way to reach every Jew and even every non-Jew that you can access, and teach them what God wants of them. This is the best way to prepare to the Vishanti B'Sechem of the Gula Amitis V'Ashleim and the Beis Hamikdash Hashlishi, which will be a base tefillah l'kol ha'amim for all people. So that's on a very practical level. What did each Rebbe add to the understanding of tzimtzum? So now that we're talking already about the maamar, so the question was asked. Let me read the full version of it. Can we ask Rabbi Jacobson to explain the concept of tzimtzum and to explain how each generation of Chabad Rebbes added a deeper explanation to the concept of tzimtzum? So, actually in the maamar Tavshin Chav Hey, you can get a sense of that to some extent, because that's what the Rebbe is explaining there. He starts with the Baal Shem Tov, but the Aleph Beis, how the Eibishter created the world with Aleph, and the Aleph is tzimtzum in the Beis, and the Beis is invited in each of the letters. Then he talks about the Magid that Kodesh Baruch Hu Osa Kamet Tzimtzumim Derech Kol Ha'elemis. Then he talks about the Alter Rebbe, the Mittler Rebbe. So it requires more study and more research to see what each one added. But briefly, there's no question, each one added a focus. So there's a few elements here. There's the chiddush of the Arizal himself in the union of Tzimtzum, which we spoke about last week, where we say other mukabolim, including the Ramak, lo yodam inyan tzimtzum. The Rebbe Rashab in Ayin Beis, I believe it's chapter 168, the maamar Maseh, Ayin Gimel, talks about this chiddush. But the Rebbe also talks about it when he brings the Mittler Rebbe Shar Yichud. He says Tzimtzum comes to answer a tremendous question. How can you say Lo Shanisi? From before the Tzimtzum, after Tzimtzum, things have changed. Before creation and after creation. Nevertheless, we say Atu Mishanivre Elam, Atu Lachir Shanivre Elam, as the Rebbe, Friedrich Rebbe brings in this chapter. So he says the answer is Tzimtzum. What's Tzimtzum? Tzimtzum is a radical quantum leap. It's not Ilah v'Olol. In Ilah v'Olol, cause and effect, because they relate to each other, so the effect changes something in the cause. They're commensurate to each other. Tzimtzum explains a concept of Ein Arech. So without the Tzimtzum, yes, of course God concealed himself. That's not the chiddush of that Arizal. That's a pasuk in the Torah, Haster Ponai, or other, but Eishes Bar Elakim. Elakim is Midas Hadin, Vat Tzimtzum. It's not the chiddush of that Arizal. The chiddush of that Arizal is actually to teach us the Ein Arech, because you could say everything before the Tzimtzum has no relationship with us, like I explained earlier. Comes the Tzimtzum and says, no, it does. Once you know that the Eibishter Shalei Berach, and that's why there's a need for a Tzimtzum, because without that, the Eir Ein Sof before the Tzimtzum would completely obliterate, or more importantly, would never allow for independent consciousness. That actually makes us understand God better. We understand how Shalei Berach he is. According to the other Mukabalim, you have to say that's off limits. We can also only relate to a God that relates to us on our terms. But that which is completely beyond, the Tzimtzum comes and says, no, you can understand through a Sagas HaShlila. If he needed such a Tzimtzum, and remember, God didn't need it. He created it so we should understand. We should understand how he's creating, but he needs to do it with the quantum leap because it's such an infinite distance between God's infinity or beyond infinity and our finite creatures. That, once you know that, then you could say I could have a relationship with it. Just like when Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, he says, Lo yireni odom v'chay, no person can see me and live, but Panim Yofis and the Rebbe, Tov Shem Ches, Tiny Sester explains what it means, you can see them both, but uponai is through Lo Yiro, by understanding that Shalei Berach us. So if you really want a relationship with Hashem, you could have one on your terms. Hashem, Birchas HaMozen, Birchas HaNenin. We thank God for the blessings He gives us. Health, life, health, Parnosa, all the other blessings. But that's God on our terms. You want to have a relationship with God on God's terms, you need to understand that God is completely beyond. That's also a relationship, because it's real. Without that, you'd have to say the God that is beyond either has no connection to us or we're not even aware of it. We speak about God more on our terms. But that Tzimtzum allows us to understand that. So then, in that itself, you have the chiddushim from every generation. You obviously have the Alter Rebbe talking about Tzimtzum is not kipshute. In Tanya Tzara Yichud Amunah Perik Zayin. And you have the Mittler Rebbe that the Rebbe quotes to explain Lo Shanisi. It's Lo Shanisi because it's Shalei Berach and not Ilah v'Olol. In addition to the fact that it's an Eir, and Eir is not impacted by its, when Eir shines, it's not impacted by where it's shining. As he explains the difference between Eir and Shefa. So bottom line is, in each maamar, each generation that Rabbeim did add to it, I'm not going to go through all the chiddushim, there's many, on many different levels. But I will focus on a few other points from Basi L'Gani. That the tzimtzum is only legabeinu. Like a student, the fact that the teacher is concealing his brilliance so the student can have space to learn on his terms, on the student's terms, is only for the student. The teacher doesn't change. The teacher has nothing gotten diminished, nothing has been diminished in his mind. And not only the etzem, but also the oyer l'shanisi. And then he says, even furthermore, says the Rebbe, and explaining the Friedrich Rebbe, even the tzimtzum legabeinu is also not a real tzimtzum. Because the point is not a tzimtzum as an end in itself. It's like the Maggid says, it's not a kedei l'sachid. So first you need a concealment. So when the teacher is concealing, for the teacher for sure there's no concealment. But even the concealment for the student, the purpose is that the student should be able to integrate, absorb, and then grow. And ultimately, like he said, the tiyos of kamese, that which he plants, his offspring, so to speak. His produce should be like him. That's the goal. The tzimtzum is a b'shvil hagilui. That's even from our point of view. However, you have to see it through. And nevertheless, there is a tzimtzum. That's the helam achar helam, ilui achar ilui. So on one hand, it's a helam achar helam, but also it leads us to great places, the greatest places. Especially when there's the bizbuz eitzes, the splurging of these treasures, in order to win the battle. One more point I'll make. This maamar, Basi L'Gani Tovshel Chafei, the Rebbe also, if you look in the Hadran on Masechta Makis of that Fabrengi, Yud Shevat Tovshel Chafei, 60 years ago, and also in the Maimarim Purim, Balaylahu, and then V'nocha, which is the maamar of Achash Pesach, and I would also add the Sikha of Shabbos Parsha Shmois Tovshel Chafei, prior to Yud Shevat. You see a consistent theme about how the Helam itself brings out even a deeper gilui, and the Helam itself is a keli telekus. Even though it's concealed, but that very concealment brings out the deepest strengths, like we're talking about here. So Rabbi Akiva, the Gemara in Makis, he laughed while his colleagues cried, because he was able to see in the Helam the gilui. They were not able, because he was Rabbi Akiva, Ben Gedim or Ged, he came from darkness, so he saw in darkness light, as explained at length in the Hadran. So that adds another aspect to Tzimtzum. The truth is, and this needs Iyun Godel, in Ayin Beis in volume 3, when he gets to Ein Oid, V'yidaita Yom V'shavesa Levavecha Ki Havayu Elikim B'Shamayim V'La'oretz Mitochas Ein Oid. And Ein Oid is referring not to Tzimtzum B'Shvil HaGilui, that the Tzimtzum itself is the koyach of the Helam HaAtzmi. So it could be that when you think of it, that could be even further beyond even Basi L'Gani, because the Rebbe's Maimonim, I have not seen that expression Helam HaAtzmi. I may have missed it, but it's definitely not an emphasis. But clearly, bottom line, everything in existence, the Gilui, the Helam for sure, is not an end in itself. It all ultimately leads to express and reveal godliness. Question is, what level of God? Next question. What are the practical applications of knowing that there are tzimtzumim before the tzimtzum harishon, as explained in Basi L'Gani 5745? Okay, so that's the next second cycle, where the Rebbe spoke on Tov Shem Hey, and that was a very clearly unique hemshech. As someone asked the question, I might as well answer it. Someone asked the question, just looking. Dear Rabbi, I heard that the maamar Basi L'Gani 5745 made an uproar by the Chassidim. Why? I wouldn't use the word uproar. It was a very inspiring, because the Rebbe is mechadish. He said he's going to talk about something that is rare in Chassidus. You don't find tzimtzum harishon by definition means the first tzimtzum. That's the language used all the time. And that refers to the tzimtzum in Eitz Chaim from the Arizal. The tzimtzum harishon, after Ein Sof Kol Maaleh Kol HaMetzias, then comes the tzimtzum harishon b'derech siluk, tremendous quantum leap. And after that comes the kav kotz of the chol l'mokim ponim, the space, chol l'mokim poni, and then comes the kav that creates all of existence. That's called tzimtzum harishon. The Rebbe said, but in some rare places, in Chassidus talks about tzimtzumim before the tzimtzum harishon. So the mere fact that the Rebbe mentioned that, and more than mentioned, elaborated in the Basi L'Gani maamar, that made a big ruckus in a positive way. There was a lot of shachvatarian, people were discussing and arguing, and there were ha'aris written. And indeed, the Rebbe responded to them in Shabbos Parsha Yisrei, and then later in Shabbos Parsha Tetzaveh, the Rebbe answered questions that were asked about Chova. From the rare Farbrengens where the Rebbe you could say, let's loose, if you wish, is talk about splurging the kaytz, splurges and explains very deep sugyas. So that was the big fuss at the time. And the sikhs, you really see the power of it. The Rebbe explains why it's very rare in Chassidus. On the other hand, we need to know this. We need to know that we're rooted in the highest levels, even higher than all these tzimtzumim. So there's a lot to say about this. So what are the practical applications of the tzimtzum before the tzimtzum? So let's go back to the central theme. We're talking about the kaytz, the hidden treasures. And what? Hidden, maaleh aden kaytz, helam achar helam, ili achar ili. Concealed within concealed. So think of it like every person has an aspect of yourself that you reveal to others. Someone you really love and care about, you reveal more. But then there are the things that are completely, fundamentally, your own intimate self, your own etzem, completely concealed. Not because you're hiding it, because it's beyond gilui. And yet, even that we have a connection with. So the Rebbe is going and literally saying that everything we spoke in Tafshin Chafei, he spoke about, yes, helam achar helam, ilu achar ilu, as we discussed. Here, he's saying that there's actually tzimtzumim before the tzimtzum addition. That's the helam achar helam. All the way first to the Spashtus Eir, to Etzema Eir, to the Eir Kol Batz Musei, to the Eir Kol B'Moir, to the Moir itself, to Yechelis, and then to Atzmus. Each of these is a quantum leap from the level before it. And all of it is given to us. Because we're rooted all the way in those highest levels, as the Rebbe explained, Shabbos Pasha Yisrei, Tavshem Mem Hey. So once you know that, you understand the practical applications. The practical applications is because each of these levels is being given to us to achieve our avodah. So just as an example, your teacher is revealing to you tremendous secrets. And there's things you understand quite well, and you use them. They help you in your life. They answer your questions, help you deal with dilemmas, give you strength. But you sense there much, much more within him. We're not just talking about that which he hasn't revealed yet, or you've not yet accessed because it takes 40 years. Person doesn't fully appreciate. You realize there's things that are completely beyond. So sometimes that example would be like a father and a child, a parent and a child. It's an atzmizdika love. It's not just based on seichel. Chassidus says seichel, mashpia and makabel, a Rav and a Talmud. The Rav is not giving the Talmud his seichel. The seichel he was born with, but his father, his mother, does give him his very etzem. But you could say the teacher, if he really loves the student, like a Rebbe and a Chassid, also has atzmizdika things he wants to give to the student. And in a time of war, that's when he splurges and that's when he gives it to him. So when you understand how each level, lifnei tzimtzum, itself requires a tzimtzum, so each level is being given to us. Now, how far does that go? Aden kaytz. Because the Eibus is Ein Sof, so Ein Sof goes one way, Gilui Ein Sof. It goes further, all the way to the lowest worlds. But there's also Helam Ad Ein Sof. And all that is given to us because it's all part of the Eitzes. So understanding how each level is Shalei Berach. Because like the Rebbe explains in Parashat Tetzaveh Memhei, the Eibus didn't have to do that. You could say Ishtalshalus begins after the Tzimtzum. Who says there's Ishtalshalus before the Tzimtzum? Ishtalshalus meaning Tzimtzum Achad Tzimtzum. But once you're saying that, that actually gives us access to it. Because if you just said it was completely removed, that's it. You hit the Tzimtzum, you hit Ein Sof Lifnei Tzimtzum, you've reached your ceiling. But here we can reach deeper levels and deeper levels. So the relationship never ends. When people ask the question, once Mashiach comes, we already have Gili Alukuz, V'nigla Kvei Hashem V'rol Kol Basa Yachdav. So look at the end of Minui Melech, Mitzvahs Minui Melech and Derech Mitzvah Sech, Tamiyah Mitzvah, Tzemach Tzedek. He says, when Moshe taught Torah, there's Gvul. But Mashiach teaches Torah, he's teaching the Ein Sof, and Ein Sof doesn't end. The relationship with Hashem will never end. Ein Lem Menucha Lei Be'elam Hazav Lei Be'elam Haba. Because it's an endless journey. Not just the endless journey to seeing the Giluyim of Elikus, endless journey to seeing the mystique and the Helam of Elikus. So it also enriches the relationship, that it's a constant journey. Imagine, many relationships suffer from the fact, I'm talking about human relationships, that it gets static, you get bored. You're accustomed to it, becomes routine. But when there's depth in your partner, your spouse, and a depth behind the depth, a helam achar helam, an ilui achar ilui, you embrace the mystique. Not everything has to be controlled. Giluyim, you could say, you somewhat master if you wish. Even that not completely because it's a lakus. But there at least it's a gilui. The helam achar helam, you're embracing the shalei berach, the wonder, the awe. Imagine constantly growing in awe. Now in a way you could say many people are not comfortable with that. I want to own it. I want it to be internalized. But awe is a tremendous power. It's transcendent. It lifts you up to a place greater than yourself. And when you achieve one level, you go and you climb the horizon and you see even a higher level. So when someone says, I want to see the horizons, you have to climb. And it's only by climbing and seeing how vast it is that makes you really feel that awe and that reverence. When it's something you can contain, you feel close to it, but not that type of shalei berach reverence. That's part of the applications. Now, since we're already on this topic, let us say like this. What does chassidus mean when it refers to Hashem's essence as light? Etzem ha'er. So I'm assuming this person is writing this in context of Basi L'Gani, but we also know in Teirah Shalom, the Rebbe Rashab says, that when we talk about atzmus, we generally mean etzem ha'er. Because first of all, as soon as you talk, it's already etzir. Even if you say atzmus is mitzusim atzmusei, his whole essence comes from within himself. He doesn't have any cause. Or built in mitzias nimtze is a non-existential existence. So yes, we're talking about exclusively atzmus. But as soon as you talk about it, you're still talking about it from the perspective of a mitzias like ourselves, mitzias nimtze, talking about built in mitzias nimtze. So be'etzem, can we really talk about atzmus? Can you really talk about something that's not expressible? Can you express the inexpressible? And yet, atzmus wants that too. Because kashem sheyesh lekeche bebilti bagvul, kach yesh lekeche begvul, like he explains in the maamar. And even on higher levels, he's not limited to just be concealed. As the Rebbe explains in Vayigash Chelik Hey, by Yofer Sha'achas b'tshuva ma'asim teim b'elam hazim b'kol chai elam haba, that Mashiach and Gul is not just for us. It's also Nachas Ruach Beira. Because the Eibishter Atzmus is not B'Shlemus if it doesn't come out Begili. However you explain that. So the bottom line is that as soon as you talk about something, you're already moved away from Etzem. Etzem is a place where there's no consciousness, awareness. As soon as I ask you, what is your left leg doing right now? So till I said that, left leg was fully there, uncompromised, but you weren't aware of it. A fish in water is a state of being. It's not a verb. It's not an action. When you are water, you're wet. A dry thing gets wet. So the action is there's a subject and an object. But once they become one, like Kamayim Layom Achasim, the pasuk says, Molor is Deis Hashem Kamayim Layom Achasim. You are one with the knowledge. Not just you know something. I'm here and I know it. You become one with it. It's a very different experience. So as soon as you speak, it's already an element of Oyer, or Etzem Oyer. But that's also a maaleh. Because the Eibishter wanted a bridge, an interface between the built Mitzias Nimtze and the Mitzias Nimtze. And Oyer is the perfect bridge between the two. So we need Oyer. Oyer Ein Sof is L'mayla Mayla Adein Kes L'mata Mata Adein Tachlis. Because Oyer has something in common with us. And I don't mean Oyer now Gili, just Oyer as built in Mitzias Nimtze coming into Mitzias Nimtze Dika existence. Then there's the Oyer the Gili, that the Helam also is part of the Gili. That's why even Mitzusim Atzmusei says Nageres Akedesh Simachav. Also comes through Oyer, but Oyer is Mein HaMoyer. He says the Oyer carries Koyach Atzmus. Oyer is not the Atzmus, but it carries it because of its bittul. It's able to carry something that it itself doesn't have. If it didn't have that utter seamless bittul, it wouldn't do that. So that's what you talk about in both directions here. So someone asks, what's the point of knowing that God is so great that we can never really know him? A person wouldn't buy a ticket to a play if he was told he's not going to be allowed to know what the play is about. That's good in plays. That's good in human constructs and human institutions. But you're talking about something that's beyond grasp. Less machshava tvisa beklal. So how can you ever have a relationship with that? It says, tough is you berusa deliba, not machshava. And you want a relationship with that. So when it comes to a play, it comes to something else. Obviously, if you don't experience it, you don't experience it. But here you want to experience something that's beyond your parameters. You want to experience a horizon, and stand in awe of something beyond you. So therefore you have to contemplate not just how the Eber says maaleh kalaman, but also how he's seviv kalaman, beyond us. And furthermore, where he says how everything is bottled. And there's a joining of Yechudi lo Yechudi, that which is beyond is one with that which is within existence. The Yichud of the higher unity of Das Elyon and Das Tachton and Yechud Tata. So you're contemplating on the things you know, like we spoke before, the Anplekte. The revealed things, you look at the Rambam says, hey, how does a person come to love and reverence? Look at the world, look at nature, look at your own life. There's many things you see the God's grand design. But that's how the artist is revealing himself through his art. But if you want to know the artist that's beyond being an artist, you have to contemplate how God is not. The primary thing of God is not to be an artist or a creator, or even to be a moyer, a source of light. It's beyond that. It's not the ikar of elikus. So knowing what we don't know actually creates a relationship with the part that we don't know. Whereas if you think you know it all, so your relationship is that which you know. So the more we understand the shalei ba'erech, the more we actually relate to God on God's terms, not just on our terms. Next question. How can we say that spreading the teachings of Chassidus by the Rebbeim is an expression of bizbuz ha'etzes, splurging the treasures? Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the Rebbe says it explicitly, because that's what Primis HaTeira is. And what's the moshel from the Alter Rebbe? That when the child is sick, literally on his deathbed, the king says, take my crown, take the most precious jewel, the eitzes, that nelam, you can't find a replacement for it. Crush it, turn it into powder, mix it with water. Maybe you'll get a drop between those clenched teeth to save his life, even if a lot of it drops on the floor. What better example for bizbuz eitzes? All why? Nitzachim. Danger. The child at risk. It's life and death. So it brings out the deepest love of the father to the child. What do I need all this giluyim, even this Evan Tev, even this maaleh and kaytz and this eitzes, if my child will not be here? So that includes the eitzes were given to fight the battles. The Rebbe Rashab, when he established tzimtzumim, that's what he said. Kol ha'yetzel Mechames Beis David. He established the yeshiva, not just another yeshiva of Torah. There are many good yeshivas like that. There should be soldiers, chayolim, tzivas Hashem, that will fight the war against Charfu Evecha Hashem and Charfu Igvus Mishichecha. That battle, and for that we're giving you a yeshiva with Nigla Torah, together with Primis HaTeira, the eitzes. And without Primis HaTeira, you can't fight this battle. First of all, especially Eden that are not familiar with Yiddishkeit, they need to touch their neshama. And even those that are familiar, it could be mitzvah sanoshim elamoda, mechanical. So Alter Rebbe came Chassidus, Baal Shem Tov, and then Magid, and the Alter Rebbe, Chassidus Chabad, Korev Elecha Dover Meid. It's relevant, it's accessible to each one of you. Baal Shem Tov taught how every person can serve God. But the Alter Rebbe taught how every person can. The example given, the Baal Shem Tov provided a ladder, and the Alter Rebbe taught us how to climb the ladder. How do we apply the statement that all sevenths are precious? Kol shviin chavivin. So first of all, anything in the number 7, like Yom HaShvi, Shabbos, Chiddush HaShvi, Tishrei, and Deit HaShvi, have a special quality. Moshe Rabbeinu brought down the Mishkan. Shechanti B'Seichem brought down the Shechina, I should say. So that's a general picture. Because Shvi is like the Shiva Midas, is the full cycle, from Chesed through Malchus. Someone asked a type of tangential question on that. Well, a little strange question, but I'll read it. How to reconcile the understanding that the Rebbe said only buy one lottery ticket. That's the keli. You don't have to buy more than that. And then you say that all sevens are beloved. Maybe we should buy 7 tickets. And I don't see the connection, frankly. The things you do, one-time thing, you make a keli. So that's the question, but it's not relevant to us. Shvi is in kedusha, not in doing things that extra that you don't need to do. There are things you have to do once, and that's enough. Okay. Just want to add about the splurging. Someone wrote, I said it, but let me just read it. Is this teachings of Chassidus does it give us the extra spiritual ammunition we need to cross the finish line and bring Mashiach? Absolutely, yes. So I wanted to just add that. Okay. Let us see what else we can add. If the Alter Rebbe opposed France and the West, why did the Frierdiker Rebbe settle in the United States? It says that he opposed Napoleon because he felt the freedoms being offered, the Alter Rebbe felt, will lead to assimilation and loss of religious identity. So why did the Frierdiker Rebbe come to America and support the United States when the freedoms offered by America also led to assimilation and loss of religious identity? Well, so firstly, there's a famous Sikha, Vayeshev Tafshin and Beis, that Rebbe already explains that was then, but after the Birurim, like the 7th generation, after the Birurim from the time of the Alter Rebbe, now we're ready to enter into France. And not only not be overwhelmed and affected by it, but actually to transform Tzarfas into Faratzta. The Rebbe explains at length Vayeshev Tafshin and Beis. Secondly, as you know, the Frierdiker Rebbe said he didn't want to come to America. He says, the Eibishter brought me here to show America is not different. And what do we see? Not Chas v'Sholom it affected, on the contrary. In America, Chabad Chassidus spread, Shlichus, Chabad houses, proliferating, continuing to proliferate. So everything in his time, the Alter Rebbe's time was like that, like the Rebbe explains with Yaakov Avinu. But they weren't ready. He wasn't ready to live side by side with Esav. It would be too difficult. But now we are ready. And again, I refer you to Vayeshev Tafshin and Beis. Okay. And I should add, with Frierdiker Rebbe coming to America, then the Rebbe coming a year and a half later, Chavches Sivan, and then 10 years, as the Rebbe always emphasized, the Frierdiker Rebbe did his Aveda, his davening and his learning, and people coming into him for Yechidus in America, from Tafshin to Tafshin Yud. The Rebbe was here, the Frierdiker Rebbe was here in Tafrei Tzaddik for a while, but made it his residence. That was part of the Birurim of the Western world. And then the Rebbe, of course, took it to a whole other level, Tafshin Yud. And there's so many parts of Basi L'Gani and the whole Avedas HaShlichus mission of our times that, if you think about it, it can be done now on levels that could never have been done that way a few hundred years ago in the time of the Alter Rebbe. Besides technology, just so many changes in the world, including the fact that we have a Malchus Shel Chesed in this country that allows people to thrive and supports Yiddishkeit and so on. Okay. There are more questions, but let me just cover a few things. Some people ask, so how do you get answers from the Rebbe today? One person asks, dear Rabbi, what's the difference between a pan, a letter, a settle? Another person writes, dear Rabbi Jacobson, thank you for your wisdom. Where does placing a letter and ask a question in Igris come from? Also, I lately went to the oil and someone told me that it's a thing to look at the video and find an answer. What does that mean? So first of all, the Rebbe has many ways to answer. The Rebbe gifin naveg, as the Rebbe says, you ask the question with sincerity, the Rebbe will find an answer. It can come many different ways. Yes, it can come from going to the oil. It can come from going to the Rebbe's room. It can come from davening in 770. It can come, is lahavdil, from an Uber driver. Harbe drachim, harbe shluchim l'mokim. There are many ways. Some people do put a letter in Igris. Do you have to do it that way? Amunah is amunah. It could work. If you believe in it, I've seen it work for people. So I don't think we should limit God's ways of answering. Comes Yud Shevat, many people go to the oil. But however, the ways, the Rebbe gives us a whole list of things to do on Yud Shevat. All these things, when we daven, you can ask Hashem, and you ask the Rebbe to help intervene. So these are all ways, and they're all legitimate. You have to find what speaks to you, and go for it. Okay. So with that, let us move to Parsha Beshalach. Parsha Beshalach is this coming Shabbos. Parsha Beshalach, of course, is a conclusion of Yetzias Mitzrayim. So in Parsha Boy, last Shabbos, we read about leaving Mitzrayim, but then Vayihi Beshalach Parei Sa'am continues, and then Parei and Mitzrayim regret, and they start pursuing the Yidden, and that leads to Kriyas Samsuf, the final conclusion with the Mitzrayim drown. So, what is the central theme of this Torah chapter? Is the continuation of Yetzias Mitzrayim, but also finishing it once and for all with Kriyas Yamsuf. It's the main. There are other elements to the Parsha, of course, including what comes afterwards. The end of the Parsha is Mechiyas HaMolek. There's the Yeridas Haman. There's different themes that you can find in Sichos explanations. What personal and global lessons does it offer us? So it continues the story of having a munah and betochen, and the Eibishter leads the way. When Achsheman Aminodov just marches right into, the Eibishter says, Vayiso, move forward. The water splits. The Jews broke into 4 camps. When they saw themselves stuck between the Egyptians pursuing them and the water in front of them, some said, let's go to war. Well, let's start the other order. Some said, let's return to Mitzrayim, surrender. Resignation. Some said, let's go to war with Egypt. Others said, let's daven. And the fourth said, let's jump into the water. The Eibishter said, none of them are correct. And what is right? Vayiso, I told you to go. What are you waiting for? So instead of getting stuck in philosophical arguments, and each one has something to say, and each one has merit, Vayiso, it's the story of life. Many people have questions today, 30 years from Gimel Tammuz, 75 years of Yud Shevat, Ad Mosai. We don't have the answers, but we have to keep forging ahead, full speed ahead. And on the contrary, more midas and netzachim. The more the helam, the more the questions, the more the fortitude, the more the vigilance that we need. That's the immediate lesson that is necessary, both here individually for each person and also collectively, globally. Eretz Yisrael is facing challenges. Become stronger. Peace out of strength. It's the only thing that speaks to enemies. Can we apply the continuing story of Exodus to the Hashdos today? Absolutely. The Hashdos is like Yetzias Mitzrayim in a way, but as we discussed, it's more complex because there are other cheshbonos that have to be taken into account. You don't want to incentivize the enemy. You want to free the hostages, obviously, but you want to most of all abolish and eliminate the enemy. Is God hardening the hearts of Hamas? Someone asked that question. Is it possible that Hamas really wants to release the hostages and make peace, but Hashem keeps hardening their heart, so they change their mind and don't release them? I have not seen that they want to. And even when it comes to Pare, it's not like exactly he wanted to. The Eibishter knew he doesn't really want to. The hardening of the heart was just giving Pare what he wants. It shouldn't succumb to a moment of weakness. So the Eibishter made sure, okay, be who you are, be the Rosh you are. If you want to put it that way, perhaps. But you know what? Let them do something about it. Give up all the hashtas immediately, surrender, and stop calling for Israel's destruction. Does the recent release of some hashtas reflect the energy of redemption we read about in these weekly portions? How do we tap into this energy? Is it just a coincidence that in these weeks the Parshas discuss the beginning of the redemption from Egypt, and we are simultaneously seeing the beginning of the redemption from Gaza as more hostages are let free? Or does it mean that in these weeks there's a greater revelation of energy of redemption? And if so, what do we need to do as a community and individually to tap into that energy for our personal redemptions? Is it automatic, or do we have to do something to tap in and benefit from it? So all the above is true. We live with the times. We learn from Mitzrayim. All of Golus, all the generations are a continuation of Yitzis Mitzrayim. So when we see it in any form of Mitzrayim v'Gvulim, psychologically, emotionally, physically, of course we learn lessons from it. And it is these Parshas is an energy of redemption and Geula. And of course we have to make a keli. The more keli we make, the more possible, the more likely we'll draw down that energy of Geula. How do you tap into it? By going out of your Mitzrayim v'Gvulim yourself. By having more emunah and betachon. By committing. By preparing for Yud Shevat. By learning and teaching chiddush and spreading chiddush. The methods that we've been told. And finally, once God promised Jacob that he himself would redeem him and his children, like it says, Ole and Naila, he'll go down with them in Mitzrayim, then they will all go up. Why did he appoint Moshe to lead the Jews out of Egypt? This is when Yaakov was afraid to visit Egypt. Hashem promised him, I myself will go down with you, and I myself will bring you out. So this is a classic question in general. On one hand, we say in the Haggadah, Lo yayidei malach, lo yayidei soraf, not through shluchim. The Eibishter b'kfeidei ba'atzmei v'hu gola. Digla aleim melch malchem lochem HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'kfeidei ba'atzmei v'hu gola. The Eibishter himself. But he chose a shliach. Aish Alekim. Misam Pel Adam, who's his mouthpiece. Like it says about Losadavi. The Eibishter could take us out of Golas, but he wants a shliach. He wants someone that's like us, a Basi L'Gani. Beis David. In this case, we're talking about Moshe. To be a dugma chaya, to bring a lakuz down in a way that we can relate to. Similar when we say Tzelem Elikim, the human being is created by Tzelem Elikim, and that tzaddik is the ultimate, that epitomizes, that personifies that Tzelem Elikim. That's why there's a Moshe in each one of us that helps us free ourselves and redeem ourselves from all Mitzrayim v'Gvulim. There's so much more to say. I'll just conclude with what we began. Remember the kaytz, the tremendous, tremendous resources and treasures that each of us is blessed with. And it's not just given to us, it's splurged. Bizbuz. You know, it's one thing, kaytz is very calculated. You give an kaytz, it's a very, very precious, hidden treasure. You're very careful. It spills. It's spilled out. It pours. That's unbelievable power that we have to finish the job of the Tzivus Hashem, we, the simple soldiers. Like he explains in the maamar of Pesach Tovshin Tes, based on a maamar from Pesach Tovrei Samach Tes. We also speaks about Midas and Etzochen, that our avodah, the final birur is birur Yishmael, and Esav is Netzach and Hoid. That Netzach, that vigilance, just forging ahead, even if you don't always feel it, but you know you need to be victorious. Like a soldier. And Hoid, accepting. Just listening. Again, you don't have to understand it all, you don't have to feel it all. Complete commitment, complete bittul. And with that, we'll march into the Gula Amitis Vashlema, into Yud Shevat, as the Rebbe concludes Basi L'Gani Tovshin Yud Aleph, V'niske, we should merit zenzich mit nerem dolamata masaret tfachim, v'hu yugalenu. Everyone have a happy Yud Shevat and a chonis to Yud Shevat. And this program continues every Sunday, 8 to 9 p.m. So the next program will be Yud Aleph Shvat, next Sunday. Kol Tuv. And may we finally merit, even before that, to the Gula Amitis Vashlema.
This program is brought to you by MyLife Chassidus Applied. Please help us continue our programs. Make even a small contribution at chassidusapply.com/donate.